I'm going to try a quick note to self little note here on my break. I was standing here thinking about the garden, pondering next year, because that's what you do. You sit here and you think about how can I do it better next year. And I'm looking at this little test garden in this old round bale feeder that I'd gotten. And this is just spilling out with, that's all sweet potatoes spilling out there along the outsides. And then I've got some determinate and indeterminate tomatoes in here. And the first note to self on this particular garden for next year, for 2023, is to do these pink fang. I really like these. These are cool, and I want to use them for salsa. But they seem to be really heavy feeders when it comes to calcium. I have indeterminate type tomatoes in here. Roma Grandes, I think these are. And they're just going like gangbusters. I mean, they're going so much. They're climbing up these corn stalks. They're climbing up the sunflower stalks, which will take me to my next note to self in a minute, but I wanted to complete this thought, is with these, they've been horrible with blossom end rot, and I think I've just about picked all of them off now. There might be, yeah, there's still another one that's sitting here, but they're terrible. So they really need some real heavy calcium when I plant these next year, because I will try. I mean, and I am getting some that are healthy. This one's really nice, and there's a few back here that are really nice. So I mean, they aren't a total loss. I mean, there is, like, whatever this plant has in his particular area, he had enough of whatever he needed to do well. I mean, those are really nice, and there's quite a few of them. So definitely calcium for these guys next year. I don't really think that this is crowded too much. I don't think that that's really a problem. These are kind of planted along the edges. The vines for the sweet potatoes actually probably help keep the ground cool around them, so they're not getting too hot. So then the other thing is I think next year, in looking at this plant, there's actually, I think, only two plants in here. There's this one here on this side, and there's this other one here on this side. So there's two of these ginormous Martino Romas, and I mean, and they're taking over the whole dang bed. I mean, thankfully I planted those pink fangs along the outside, so they're not getting choked out. But they're leaning up against the sunflowers, and I just tossed those seeds in here, and I just tossed some corn in here. I had a handful left, and I was like, throw it in here, see what it does. And well, this is what it's doing. It's going crazy, and it looks way better than their counterparts over here that were grown in the regular dirt. And I just amended that with some more compost. It didn't really get very much in the beginning, but this was planted in straight compost, the whole thing. I did just put the pink fangs did get an amendment of some crushed oyster shells about a week or two ago. And then yesterday I gave them some trifecta, or the other day I gave them some trifecta, but I couldn't really water until this morning. Yesterday was about 92, and then over the weekend it was really, really hot. I watered, I think, Sunday night, and then it's been too hot. It's now Thursday, and so this morning was the first time I got to water. The trifecta came in, I think, on Tuesday. So now that's getting down in the roots. I'm hoping that it helps, these guys get a little bit more of what they need. But anyway, back to these determinate tomatoes now. These pink fangs are indeterminate. I mean, and they'll just keep growing and growing until the frost kills them. These are about, I think, at their height almost. And they're leaning up against these corn. They're leaning up against these sunflowers that Sassy felt so kind as to prune for me. And that was on me because, little 4-foot fence, big 6-foot tall horse, that's got the neck of a giraffe. So, you do the math. I didn't, what do they call that? Operator error. So anyway, next year, I think, for my note to self on this is I'm going to plant these indeterminate tomatoes with sunflowers so that they have a sturdy stalk. I mean, even though this is not fully grown and it's pretty much cut off, it's still pretty sturdy, and it's not going to tip over because the roots are really strong on those suckers. I mean, I really had to do some, I think I had to last year, I tied my 4-wheeler up to them and had to yank them out of the ground. So these, I mean, you look at these guys, these are those Roma Grandes again. I mean, there's just tons of them. There's usually about, 5 or 6 of these, sometimes 7 or 8 on a little cluster of these guys. And you get a plant that's as big as that, and these little stakes over here, I mean, these stakes don't cut it for something that size. And these plants did not get nearly as big. And these are all different. There's 4 or 5 different kinds over here. They didn't get nearly as big, but these tomatoes, I mean, what are these ones? I can't remember. These are the super sauce over here. So the super sauce, I mean, that's my hand. And that'll get a little bit bigger. And then the gladiators over here, I mean, again, here's this giant tomato, and you can even see, I mean, that's my hand, and that's that tomato. It's pretty big. But you've got these flimsy little things, these stakes, that really, I mean, if you're going to have smaller tomatoes, they do help. But then I got, you got to tie them up, and you'd probably still have to tie them up either way over there. But with these big fruits here, that might have to come out. This isn't going to hold this much longer. It's not going to do very well. So I think if I take and plant a sunflower with the tomato plants, that will be a nice natural trellis, and it'll also help give the tomato a little bit of shade on those hot days, because they really don't like the heat, I guess. So, and it's been hot, and I do have some that are starting to ripen. I actually, with the funny story, that one yesterday looked like this. It was just starting to kind of blush a little bit. So I was peeling bananas to freeze some bananas, so I took some banana peels with that whole, the chemical, the gas that they emit when they're ripening, just to see. And I did the same thing with these over here, and they're actually, I think they're probably, I mean, only a day, and they're really ripening up pretty quick. So that was interesting. And this one too, I think I did that one, and that one, I don't think had hardly, I don't even think that one was even blushing, and it is today. So I think that, going ahead and planting those sunflowers with these indeterminate tomatoes, and even with the determinate ones, I mean, because those mammoth sunflowers, I have a couple of volunteers way over there in my old garden, and it's a super windy day, so I don't even know if you can see it over there, but there's a couple of volunteer mammoths over there, and windy. And I think the tallest one last year we measured the stalk was like, it was almost 15 feet, I want to say. So that'll give, I think, a really good support for these. It'll offer them shade. I just have to make sure that I keep the soil really, really well amended with a lot of compost, because the tomatoes are such heavy feeders, and I really don't know much about what the sunflowers need. I mean, they seem to do well no matter where I put them. These ones are smaller, on the smaller side, just because I planted them really close together as a deterrent for cross-pollination, because I have a couple of different colors of Hopi corn. I've got some blue and I have some purple. And I didn't want those to cross-pollinate. I wanted to keep those true. And so I'd read where it's feasible to put the corn in between the sunflowers, and as you can see, I think that will probably work. Then I've got some regular sweet corn over here, like again, which I went back to. It's not doing nearly as, I mean, it's already starting to get its tassels and things, and it's, I mean, I think the tallest one is maybe 3.5 feet. So these are very tiny. Maybe I'll just, whatever they come out, I'll just pull like baby corns off of these for stir fry and stuff, throw in the freezer. So next year I'll make sure that I just put it in straight up compost. I mean, because these were planted at the exact same time, and these have, you know, very nice little ears of corn. I mean, they're maybe about a foot taller or so. I mean, not counting what they're built up here. And then my test run here on the corn too will be the, I threw some, I can't remember, one of the Indian corns in here. It's like a multicolored corn. I threw that in here, so we'll see how it does. I mean, this only literally just popped up Monday morning, and they're already, I mean, they're, look at them. I mean, and that was just since Monday, and we're on, today's Thursday, so, I mean, that's going like gangbusters, and there's some spaghetti squash in there because the deer ate mine, so I'm trying to eke out some sort of a harvest on spaghetti squash. So I don't think, you know, between corn and sunflowers, I think either one, I mean, the corn is a really heavy feeder, so I mean, they all seem to be doing fine in here, so as long as I plant them the same as I did this year with a lot of compost, I don't think I'll have a problem with any nitrogen deficiencies or anything. So I could try a couple of beds next year, you know, with both, one with just corn as supports and the other with just sunflowers supports. Obviously, corn and sunflowers combined, everything in here is doing well. So, so that's my note to self for next year. I don't think I really have any other notes this year. Oh, these little bags are to keep the flowers from cross-pollinating, so that I can save the seeds and know that I have true seeds and not a crossbreed. The crossbreeds don't usually taste as good. These are my indeterminates. Brian built this last week, and I absolutely love it. I'm hoping he has time to maybe build me one more, or I can maybe try and find some time. But it's worked out really good, and we just string them up. And I think I planted some cilantro down in there, but these have to be pruned. I've got to get some of these extra leaves off of here, because the indeterminates, you can just let them kind of grow as a stalk, so that you've got good air circulation down here. So like all of that, I'm going to come through and take all that off. And then I've got cilantro and radishes growing down there. And these, gosh, it's windy, which is nice because it's hot. But these have to be trimmed. These are an indeterminate. I gotta tie him up. But these are mushroom basket, they're called. And they're pretty wonky looking. Pretty cool. But those are an indeterminate too. And I'd like to have a taller trellis for these. So I'm hoping to maybe build one of these rather, so that I can grow these like the other ones and grow them upward more, because they'll just keep producing and producing until the frost kills them, and they'll keep growing and growing as far as you'll let them. And so these are another option to go with the sunflowers, because they'll just sit and vine in and out. And those big mammoth sunflowers, those are big enough and strong enough to support a lot of vining action on it. So, and that's the other thing. Oh, yeah, that's the other note to self. I gotta pick my way through here. I'm having problems with, it's probably like a cabbage worm or something. They're getting into all of my brassicas. These are my Brussels sprouts, and then they're messing with my cauliflower too. I had to tie my cauliflower up because the twisters weren't twisting, but they're chewing them up. So I have to, for next year, I have to figure out, it's purple, my other purple one, it's not, oh, can I get in there? There he is. So, yeah, so for next year, I've got to find a better way to fight these cabbage worms, because they're just wreaking havoc. That one's looking nice too. The bigger it gets, the darker it gets. It's deep purple cauliflower. You know, they're not, I mean, they are messing with the broccoli a little bit. Well, yeah, that one too. And this one's about to seed. So I'm almost ready to harvest. Rue, you know, he's quiet all day until he sees me. And then I try and do these little garden diaries, and he doesn't shut up. But, so these are about ready. I can bring those in and start drying them, I think. And then I still have time to plant some for this year. I tried to plant some cauliflower over here for a fall crop, but we got zapped with that heat, and I think all the seedlings just got toasted. So, and some of my mammoth red cabbage made it through the heat. That one didn't, but so there's maybe 5 or 6 of those. So yeah, note to self, figure out a better way to hide my plants from these cabbage worms, because they're just trashing everything. I'm trying not to look in there, but I haven't seen one, so they come out at night. So we'll see. I'll have to, if I find a good deterrent for them. I thought the nasturtiums would hide things, but yeah, you can see they're leaving a mess and just chewing up the leaves and leaving a mess in my cauliflower, which is annoying because this is my first successful cauliflower ever. I've never been able to grow it. Finally did it. Very proud of myself, but now these dang worms are just messing with everything. So yeah, binder clips, you know, multifunction. So that's it. So note to self, those 3 things: cabbage worms, calcium, trellises.